The old Blackwood house stood on a hill, its silhouette etched against the horizon like a scar that refused to fade. For as long as anyone in town could remember, it had been there, looming, silent, and shrouded in rumors. The house was a constant presence, a shadow that stretched over the neighborhood, daring anyone to come closer. At dusk, it became a skeletal silhouette against the bruised twilight sky, its spires and chimneys jutting upward like the bones of some long-dead creature. The air around it always seemed colder, as if the sun itself was afraid to linger too long. It was more than abandoned. It was forgotten, a place where legends and childhood fears were born and grew wild. Stories about the Blackwood house were whispered at sleepovers and around campfires, tales of ghostly figures in the windows and strange lights flickering at midnight. No one ever saw anyone go in, and no one ever saw anyone come out. Its windows stared out like vacant eyes, promising only decay and secrets best left undisturbed. The glass was cracked and clouded, but sometimes, if you looked just right, you could almost imagine something watching from within. No one had lived there for a century, not since the Blackwood family vanished one cold autumn night. The story went that they simply disappeared, leaving dinner half-eaten on the table and candles burning in the windows. The town never spoke of it openly, but everyone knew the tale. Old newspaper clippings, yellowed and brittle, hinted at investigations and wild theories. Some blamed bandits, others whispered of curses. But the truth was lost to time, swallowed by the house itself. Now it was our turn to knock on its door. The dare had started as a joke, a way to prove we weren't afraid of childish stories. But as we stood at the edge of the property, the laughter faded, replaced by a nervous silence. 4 of us: Liam, the loudmouth leader who always had something to prove; Chloe, his loyal girlfriend, who hid her fear behind a brave face; Ben, the logical one, who insisted ghosts weren't real but still checked over his shoulder; and me, Maya, the skeptic, who never believed in anything I couldn't see for myself. I told myself it was just an old house, nothing more. But as the shadows lengthened, even I felt the weight of its gaze. $100 to whoever spends the night, Liam dared, waving the money like a flag. It was enough to make us all hesitate, but none of us wanted to back down. Pride, more than greed, kept us rooted to the spot. None of us wanted to be the coward, so we stood at the rusted gates, the house looming over us like a judge waiting to pass sentence. The iron creaked in the wind, and the path beyond was choked with weeds and shadows. The wind through its gables sounded like a warning, a low moan that seemed to say, "Turn back." But pride kept us moving forward. The dare was set, the stage was prepared, and the audience, I feared, was the house itself, waiting, watching, and perhaps remembering the last time its doors were opened on a night like this. The front door was a monstrous slab of oak, scarred by time. Liam shoved, but it wouldn't budge, until Ben pointed out a rotted gap just wide enough for us. One by one, we slipped inside. The air was thick and cold, heavy with the scent of decay and something metallic. Our flashlights cut through the gloom, revealing peeling wallpaper and a silent grandfather clock stuck at midnight. Doorways gaped like open mouths, leading to rooms shrouded in shadow. Every step echoed, the house seeming to announce our arrival. Shadows twisted, faces appeared in water stains, and the feeling of being watched grew stronger. We were no longer just friends on a dare. We were trespassers in a rotting tomb. The house had swallowed us whole. We explored the ground floor, flashlights trembling. In the parlor, furniture draped in white looked like ghosts. A soft shuffling noise came from above, too heavy for rats. We froze, hearts pounding, then forced ourselves onward. The library's shelves were empty, but a single book lay open. Ben reached for it, but a sudden icy gust slammed it shut, though the windows were sealed. Chloe whimpered, wanting to leave, but pride kept us rooted. Then, a door at the far end creaked open, revealing a hallway of absolute blackness. It wasn't an invitation, it was a challenge. The house was daring us deeper. Our bravado was crumbling. The silence pressed in, thick and expectant. We stepped into the darkness. The feeling of being watched became a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders and making every breath feel shallow. It was as if invisible eyes tracked my every move, their gaze lingering in the darkness, patient and unblinking. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by the faint creaks of the old house settling, each sound amplifying my unease. My eyes searched every shadow, desperate to find the source of my discomfort. I swept the flashlight across the room, illuminating empty corners and dust-laden shelves. But nothing was there, at least nothing I could see. Yet the sensation only grew stronger, as if something just out of sight was drawing closer, feeding on my fear. It felt personal, as if the house itself was peering into my thoughts, sifting through my memories and secrets. The walls seemed to pulse with a quiet awareness, and every creak or groan felt intentional, like a whispered message meant only for me. I could almost sense a presence lurking within the very structure, ancient and watchful. The darkness beyond the open library door seemed alive, pulling at me with a cold, ancient hunger. It was more than just the absence of light. It was a void that beckoned, promising secrets and dangers in equal measure. I hesitated at the threshold, feeling the chill seep into my bones, as if the darkness itself was reaching out to claim me. I heard a whisper in my mind, a voice full of loneliness and malice, echoing through the empty halls. It was a soundless murmur, threading through my thoughts, promising both companionship and ruin. The voice was not quite human, and its words were just out of reach, but their intent was clear. I was not alone, and I was not welcome. Ben's voice snapped me out of it, breaking the spell for a moment. He called my name, his tone sharp with concern, but I couldn't shake the dread that clung to me. Even surrounded by friends, I felt isolated, as if the house had singled me out for its attention. The observer was still there, patient and unblinking, lurking just beyond the edge of perception. I could feel its gaze following me, studying my reactions, savoring my fear. It was a presence that needed no form, no face, just the certainty that it was always watching. It knew we were scared, and it was enjoying the show. Every shiver, every nervous glance, every whispered word of reassurance only seemed to amuse it further. The house thrived on our terror, drawing strength from our vulnerability, and I could sense its satisfaction growing with every passing moment. My friend's fear was for the noises and cold spots, the things they could explain away as tricks of the mind or quirks of an old building. They clung to each other, seeking comfort in numbers, but I knew that what haunted us was far more than creaking floorboards or drafts of icy air. Mine was for something deeper, something that wanted me, specifically. I could feel its intent, sharp and focused, as if I had been chosen for a purpose I could not understand. My heart pounded in my chest, and every instinct screamed at me to run, but I was rooted in place by a mixture of terror and fascination. The house was no longer just a place. It was a presence, vast and ancient, with desires of its own. It watched us with a hunger that went beyond curiosity, and I realized that we were not just visitors. We were prey, caught in a web spun long before we arrived. We were trapped by our own pride, unwilling to admit our fear or turn back. Each of us wore a mask of bravery, but beneath it, we were all trembling. The house seemed to sense our stubbornness, feeding off our refusal to leave, tightening its grip with every minute we stayed. And the house was savoring every moment, relishing our fear and uncertainty. It waited, patient and hungry, knowing that sooner or later, one of us would break. And that was exactly what it wanted. The night grew colder, the chill unnatural and biting. In the dining room, we found handprints in the dust, long, impossibly thin fingers. As we watched, a new print formed before our eyes. Ben broke first, his logic failing him. The sight shattered our courage. The dare was forgotten. We bolted for the foyer, but the house wasn't done. A music box began to play, its melody warped and mocking. The tune followed us, a sinister soundtrack to our panic. The house was awake, fully aware, and feeding on our fear. We were desperate to escape, but every step felt futile. The walls seemed to close in, the cold deepening. The house was alive, and it wanted us to stay. Our terror was its delight. Panic drove us to the door, our hearts pounding so loudly it was almost deafening in the suffocating silence. We clawed at the wood, desperate for escape, but the gap we'd entered through was gone, vanished as if it had never existed. The air was thick with fear, every breath shallow and ragged, as we realized we were no longer in control of our fate. The wood was whole, the exit sealed. We were trapped, locked in by something far older and more sinister than any of us could comprehend. The door, once our way out, now felt like a wall between us and the world we knew. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the staircase, slow, deliberate, each one sending chills down our spines. The sound was unmistakable, but when we looked, no one was there. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting and stretching as if alive. Our flashlights shook as we aimed them up the stairs, beams trembling in our unsteady hands. The steps kept coming, relentless, as if something unseen was stalking us from the darkness above. Every creak of the old wood made us flinch. Chloe screamed, a sharp, piercing sound that cut through the gloom. Something cold had brushed her hair, icy and intangible, like the touch of a ghost. We spun around, searching for the source, but saw only shadows. We huddled together, backs pressed tight, flashlights now off to avoid drawing attention. The darkness was absolute, pressing in on us from all sides. The footsteps stopped, leaving a silence that was somehow even more terrifying. The music box, which had been playing a haunting melody somewhere in the house, fell silent. Its absence left a void, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for us to make a move. The quiet was worse than any sound, a predator savoring its prey, drawing out the moment before it strikes. We stood frozen, afraid to speak, afraid to even breathe too loudly. The house had us cornered, its walls closing in, and it was only a matter of time before whatever haunted these halls revealed itself. We could feel its presence, watching, waiting. Every exit was gone, every hope fading with each passing second. The windows were bricked up, the doors sealed, and even the air felt heavy, as if the house itself was alive and determined to keep us inside. The house was a living trap, its ancient timbers groaning with anticipation. We were caught in its web, powerless to escape, our fear feeding whatever darkness lurked within. Our fear was the only thing left, raw, unfiltered, and growing with every heartbeat. Sweat dripped down our faces, our eyes wide and searching for any sign of hope. The silence pressed in, thick and final, as if the house itself was smothering us. Every second stretched on, the tension mounting until it was almost unbearable. We waited for the next move, knowing that whatever came next would change us forever. In that darkness, hope flickered, but fear reigned supreme. The silence stretched, nerves fraying. We tried the doors and windows, but everything was sealed tight. The world outside was visible but unreachable, a cruel taunt. Frost crept across the glass, sealing us in further. The house was shifting, closing in, a living entity contracting around its prey. Footsteps circled us, unseen but undeniable. The temperature dropped, breath pluming in the air. The exits were gone, the windows opaque with ice. The house was a cage and we were trapped birds. The footsteps grew closer, the pressure mounting. The house was hungry and it would not let us go. We were at its mercy. The footsteps stopped behind me. I felt a cold, ancient presence. A whisper slithered into my ear. A sound, not a word, but full of hunger. Our flashlights died, plunging us into total darkness. Panic erupted, screams, shouts, desperate calls. I tried to scream, but no sound came. A hand gripped my arm, impossibly cold, fingers long and possessive. I was dragged away from my friends, deeper into the house. Their voices faded as I was pulled toward the grand staircase and the darkness above. I fought, but the grip was iron. The last thing I heard was Ben shouting my name, then silence. Only my ragged breathing and the shuffling drag of my feet remained. The house had claimed me, and the darkness swallowed everything. The sun rose, casting a peaceful light over Blackwood House. From outside, it was just an old, abandoned home, its secrets hidden. Inside, the handprints remained, the clock frozen at midnight. The house was silent, patient, waiting for the next dare. Did any of us escape, or did the house claim us all? Are our whispers now part of its echoes, our faces in the stains and shadows? Some places hold on to you, leaving a cold spot in your memory. The house is still there, watching, waiting. What's the scariest experience you've ever had? Let us know in the comments. For more terrifying tales, subscribe and share if you dare.